Well friends, in the earlier module, we have discussed about some basic concepts, distinguishing features and application areas of two theories, namely circuit theory and field theory. In this module, we are going to discuss how the two theories are related with each other. Ohm's law and Kirchhoff's laws. These two laws, they form the basis of circuit theory. How these two laws can be derived from the results of field theory, that we are going to discuss in this module. We talk about induced EMF, the potential difference across a resistor, the potential difference across a capacitor, and so many things. How all these expressions which we use in circuit theory can be derived by using field theory. That also will be a topic of discussion in this module. Some systems like transmission line, for example, can be discussed by using circuit theory as well as field theory under some assumptions. What are those assumptions? So, we are going to talk about such assumptions in this module. However, some systems like waveguide, for example, cannot be discussed by using circuit theory. Why? Magnetic circuits, they form an important part of electromagnetics. How magnetic circuits are analyzed? These circuits can be analyzed by using analogy between circuit theory and magnetic circuits. How? What is the analogy? We are going to discuss about that point also. There are so many things which we are going to discuss. However, we are going to restrict our discussion only to some important topics in electromagnetics. Rather, we can say that how and why aspect of all these things will be discussed in today's module. After going through the concepts of this module, you will be able to understand the derivations of basic circuit laws and equations using electromagnetic field theory and the underlying assumptions. In addition, you will be able to understand the role of mathematical theorems and numerical techniques. You will be able to know about the concept of lumped and distributed parameters. Also, you will be able to learn about the analogy between electrical and magnetic circuits. To begin with, let us see basic facts about the two theories. We know that in circuit theory, besides energy sources, we always have to think about three components, namely resistor, capacitor and inductor. The reason is quite obvious. The electric charge, due to its static and dynamic state of motion, will give rise to electric and magnetic energy. Thus, we have to deal with electromagnetic energy in general. A part of this electromagnetic energy may be used, that is dissipated, and the remaining energy will be stored. To account for the dissipation of energy, we think of resistor. For storage of electric and magnetic energy, we have capacitor and inductor respectively. Thus, finally, we have resistor, inductor and capacitor. The expression for resistance, capacitance and inductance and the potential difference across each of them can be obtained by using the electromagnetic fields. Ohm's law and Kirchhoff's laws are the main laws which form the basis of circuit theory and can be derived using field theory. The circuit variables, namely potential difference V across and the current I through a conductor, are related with the electromagnetic fields as shown. The electromagnetic field theory mainly involves Lorentz force and Maxwell's equations along with different laws of electromagnetics associated with them as shown. In field theory, we have to think of Maxwell's equations and Lorentz force in association with each other. This is because from Maxwell's equations, we come to know how fields behave. The relation of force with the electromagnetic fields is known from Lorentz force. Thus, through Lorentz force, Maxwell's equations tell us how electric and magnetic fields interact with matter. The quantities like resistance, capacitance and inductance can then be expressed in terms of the electromagnetic properties of the matter. In circuit theory, we use sources of electrical energy, say a chemical cell for example. The concepts of field theory in terms of the quantities like ion density, mobility, concentration gradient, diffusion coefficient of positive and negative ions, etc., are to be used while theoretically estimating the EMF receivable from the cell. In circuit theory, it is not expected to obtain such expressions. We assume the values of the EMF to be known. Now, as a part of discussion about relation between field and circuit theory, let us discuss one by one how various laws and some results used in circuit theory can be derived using field theory in more general form. To start with, let us discuss about Ohm's law. We all are familiar with the statement and meaning of the physical quantities involved in the mathematical expression representing Ohm's law. Linear or piecewise linear circuits and systems can be analyzed using Ohm's law. Can Ohm's law be derived from Maxwell's equations alone? Unfortunately, the answer to the question is negative. However, Ohm's law in microscopic form, namely J is equal to sigma E, can be derived using some concepts of field theory. Consider a resistor in the form of a small cylinder of length L with cross-sectional area A. When the electric field is applied along its axis, electrons moving through it attain average drift velocity, which is very small. Due to this motion of electrons, there arises an average current density J proportional to the strength of the electric field E, which is expressible as J is equal to sigma E, where sigma is the property known as electrical conductivity of the material. Along their path, electrons continuously accelerate and decelerate due to collision with intermediate atoms. Due to such collisions, energy is dissipated. This gives rise to what is known as potential difference across the ends of a conductor. This potential difference can be computed using the line integral of electric field as shown. The mathematical computations lead to the expression for resistance as shown. From the expression for resistance, we understand that resistance of a resistor is directly proportional to its length and inversely proportional to the area of cross section. This is the result familiar to us. It be noted that the result J equal to sigma E is derived separately using the concepts of field theory. Ohm's law in microscopic form, namely J equal to sigma E, can be derived by using some other models also. It is advisable to refer to one of such models known in literature as Drude's model. It uses the concept of drift velocity of charged particles and some other quantities. For small electric fields, using the linear response theory, Ohm's law in microscopic form can be derived. It leads to Kubo's formula for electrical conductivity, which involves the use of Maxwell's equation as one of the many entities. One should remember the rigor in mathematical and theoretical considerations in establishing this apparently simple law. Now, let us see how Kirchhoff's first law, also known as Kirchhoff's current law, can be derived using the results of field theory. For this, consider Maxwell's equation. Taking divergence followed by the use of Maxwell's first equation results in the equation minus del dot J is equal to da bar rho by da bar T, where J is the current density and rho is the charge density. Note that each one of J and rho in general consists of three terms as shown. It be noted that equation 1 is the fundamental equation of physics known as equation of continuity. Taking volume integral of equation 1 and then applying Gauss divergence theorem, we obtain equation number 3 relating surface integral of free current density J with volume integral of the time rate of change of charge density rho as shown. Clearly, the left hand side of equation 3 indicates the total current entering the volume V. The right hand side of equation number 3 indicates the time rate of change of the total charge enclosed in volume V. This is the general form of Kirchhoff's current law. Note that here Algebraic values of currents Ik are to be considered for summation to obtain the law in the most familiar form. If the total charge contained in volume V is 0 or constant in time, then the above equation reduces to KCL in a form which is familiar to most of us. It be noted that the volume V shrinking to 0 may be treated to represent the nodal point of the conventional circuits. We are familiar with Kirchhoff's voltage law. The law can be derived from Maxwell's third equation, that is using Faraday's law and Stokes' theorem. Consider Maxwell's third equation. Take surface integral of both sides over a surface S whose boundary is a closed contour C. The surface can be chosen so as to include all the sources of EMF on its boundary C along with all the circuit elements causing potential drops due to the passage of electric current through them and the conducting wires connecting different components in the circuit. The connecting wires are assumed to be filamentary and perfect conductors of negligible cross section. By applying Stokes' theorem to left hand side of the equation, we can convert surface integral of electric field to line integral over the closed contour C as shown. For evaluating the line integral of electric field, the closed contour C can be supposed to be comprising of different circuit elements causing potential drops and the filamentary conducting wires connecting these elements. Being perfect conductors, these connecting wires will cause zero potential drops across each of them. Assuming the presence of total k number of circuit elements causing potential drops, the line integral then can be represented as the sum of all such individual potential drops. The surface integral of magnetic induction on the right hand side represents the total magnetic flux associated with the area S. Note that the magnetic flux consists mainly of three parts, namely the flux generated around the conducting wires due to the flow of current through them, the applied flux and the leakage flux. However, these being very small are generally ignored. In such a case, right hand side will be 0. Thus finally, we have Kirchhoff's voltage law as shown. It be noted that in the literature, the derivations of Kirchhoff's laws and some other results have been discussed in much more details involving high level of mathematical rigor and approximations. It is advised to read from the respective references to have a better insight into the subject. We know that the voltage induced across an inductor of inductance L due to a time varying current IT flowing through it is given by L multiplied by di by dt. This result can be obtained using Maxwell's third equation, which represents Faraday's law. For understanding the derivation, let us consider an inductor with a single turn carrying current IT through it as shown. For application of the result, consider a closed contour C comprising of the single turn inductor and an air gap at its two ends as shown. With mathematical steps as shown, Maxwell's third equation can be finally expressed in terms of a line integral and surface integral as shown. For evaluating the line integral, let us assume that the loop is traced in the clockwise direction, which is the direction of current. The line integral can be split in two parts, namely one over the path in air and the other over the wire. The electric field inside the conducting turn of the inductor is 0. Hence, the line integral of E over the wire is 0. Hence, we have only the line integral of E over the path length in air. This is nothing but the potential difference across the single turn inductor. The magnetic induction B and hence the magnetic flux are linearly proportional to the current flowing through the wire. The constant of proportionality is known as the inductance of the single turn. Using the expression for magnetic flux, we obtain the expression for voltage drop across the single turn inductor as shown. A multi-turn inductor can be assumed to be made up of n identical turns arranged one below the other. The voltage drop across it then can be found by evaluating the line integral over n turns, which is n times the potential drop across a single turn inductor. Note that the inductance L of a coil can be found by evaluating the surface integral of magnetic induction B, which needs the use of Biot and Savart law or Ampere's law. The inductance L of a practical inductor comprises of two parts, namely internal inductance and external inductance. For determining these values, we need to calculate the magnetic field within the wire as well as outside the wire. Unless we determine the inductance values accurately, the results obtained by circuit theory will not match with the experimentally observed ones. At higher frequencies, these values matter significantly and circuit theory may fail to give proper results. Presence of a transmitter like a cell phone or a motor or transformer in the vicinity of the circuit may contribute to the inductance of the coil. However, in practice, it is negligibly small as compared to the inductance of the coil itself. Similar to inductor, we can obtain an expression for the voltage between the plates of a parallel plate capacitor. While deriving the relation using Maxwell's first equation, we have to use the linear relationship between electric field and the electric charge. It is an example of enjoying the flavor of intellectual and intuitive argument done in physics while deriving such results. By applying field theory to any closed circuit, we obtain more general results with some assumptions. These results can reduce to the results in the form familiar to us. Some of such assumptions are as shown. Assumption of perfectly conducting wires with zero internal electric field, their filamentary nature, static nature of circuits are some of the prominent assumptions. We assume that electric field inside a conductor is zero. It is true only when the conductor is static. When we apply electric field to such a conductor, the free electrons inside it move for some time and finally attain their positions in such a way that inside the conductor the net electric field is zero. The time taken to achieve this situation is estimated in terms of a physical quantity known as relaxation time. The expression can be derived using field theory. For good conductors, it is extremely small and hence is generally neglected. Consider the LCR circuit as shown. The circuit can be assumed to be a closed contour C with area S. Use of Faraday's law and Stokes' theorem leads to the evaluation of the line integral of electric field over C. The electric field inside a static conductor is zero. Hence, while evaluating this line integral, the contribution due to the filamentary conducting wires connecting different circuit elements can be assumed to be zero. The other line integrals, which represent the potential drops across respective circuit elements, can be incorporated using known results derived using field theory as explained earlier. The right hand side involves the surface integral of magnetic induction over the surface S and represents the magnetic flux corresponding to the contribution of inductive potential drops of different types. The physical dimensions of the circuit, its elements and the inter-element separation in comparison with wavelength decides the way in which the signals should be modeled. For example, at low frequencies, the wavelength of signal is very large. The physical dimensions of the circuit is obviously small as compared to this wavelength. Hence, the behavior of the circuit can be modeled using lumped element model. Kirchhoff's laws are the basis of analysis of such system. For DC signals with zero frequency, the wavelength is infinite, hence Kirchhoff's laws can be used without any difficulty. At higher frequencies, when the distance between components are a significant fraction of the wavelength or greater, the signals in the circuit are treated as waves and are modeled using transmission line theory, which uses distributed nature of components. In the case when the component dimensions are comparable with the wavelength, then the system needs to be modeled using electromagnetic field and wave theory. One should not get confused in understanding the two terms, namely drift velocity of electrons and the speed of the signal which propagates through the conductor. Drift velocity depends upon the applied electric field and mobility of the charge carrier. For electrons, it is extremely small. The speed of the signal, on the other hand, is related with the speed at which any change in voltage at one point is transmitted to other point in the circuit. This speed depends upon the material of the conducting wire and the composition of insulation and dielectric properties of medium surrounding the conductor. We know how the speed of an electromagnetic signal is related with its frequency. The relation is V equal to f lambda, where f is the frequency and lambda is the wavelength. By assuming that the speed of the signal through a good conductor is nearly equal to the speed of light in vacuum, we can compute the wavelengths for different frequencies. Let us have a look at some of such values which are computed by using the relation. I would like to make a special mention of the fact that for smaller frequencies up to few hundreds of hertz, the wavelength is very large and hence circuit theory results can be applied by assuming the lumped nature of the components, while for frequencies above 1 GHz, the wavelength is very short and hence there is no way but to use field theory. Thus, the knowledge about computations of such wavelengths can be highly useful to decide whether the circuit can be analyzed or the system can be analyzed by using circuit theory using lumped or distributed parameters or field theory. Let us discuss something about transmission lines. The equations in the case of an infinite two-wire transmission line can be obtained both by field theory and by circuit theory. It be remembered that while applying circuit theory, the distributed component model is to be adopted instead of lumped component model. Consider the two-wire infinite transmission line as shown. Applying Ohm's law, the change dV in voltage over a length dx equals I into Z into dx. Thus, we have dV by dx is equal to I into Z. Similarly, the change dl in current over length dx of the line equals V into Y into dx. Thus, we have di by dx is equal to V into Y. Differentiating the two equations with respect to x yields the differential equations as shown. Assuming the transmission line to be uniform with no variation of y or z with x, we have dz by dx equal to 0. Thus, we get the desired transmission line equations as shown. Note that these equations can be shown to be the same as those obtained from Maxwell's equation, that is by using field theory. Let us see how. Assuming a plane electromagnetic wave traveling in x direction with electric field vector along y axis and magnetic field vector along z axis along a transmission line comprising of two parallel strips as shown. The corresponding transmission line equations can be obtained using Maxwell's third and fourth equation involving curl of electric and magnetic fields by following the steps which are as shown. Step number 1. Express the field vectors E, H, D and B in Cartesian coordinate system, assuming the medium to be linear and homogeneous with j equal to sigma e, d equal to epsilon e and b equal to mu h. Step number 2. Similarly, the two equations involving curl obtain wave equation for electric field and magnetic fields in phasor form. Using the values of inductance, capacitance, conductance per unit length and the potential difference V and current I associated with the two parallel strips, obtain the equations as shown. Include the effect of lossy nature of conducting strips through resistance per unit length to modify the relation as shown. The equation can be simplified to obtain transmission line equations which are similar to those obtained by circuit theory earlier. We know that circuit theory applies mainly to closed paths in which there is a return path for the current to arrive at the same starting point. Can we discuss the transfer of electromagnetic energy from one point to the other in the case of a system having no return path for the current? We can have such systems of conductors known as waveguides. Different types of waveguides can be found to be discussed in literature. For example, consider a hollow conductor in the form of a cylinder or a rectangular parallelepiped. It has no return path, hence it cannot be treated as a circuit. Then can it transmit electromagnetic energy through it? As per the norms of circuit theory, the answer is no. However, it is not the case. Waveguides can propagate higher modes of electromagnetic waves which have components of E and H in the direction of propagation. It is also observed that such waveguides allow the transfer of electromagnetic energy if and only if the frequency of electromagnetic wave is above some particular frequency known as cutoff frequency. Electromagnetic wave with frequency below the cutoff frequency cannot propagate through the waveguide. For a given mode, the cutoff frequency depends upon the geometry of the waveguide and can be computed using electromagnetic field theory only. The concepts of equivalent elements in circuit theory can be related to the phenomena in the field theory. Cavity resonators are a good example of it. Resonator is an electromagnetic energy storage device at microwave frequencies. We know that at low frequencies, a parallel combination of a capacitor and an inductor form a resonant circuit. To make this concept applicable for higher frequencies, the inductance and capacitance can be reduced with suitable decrease in geometrical parameters of the conductors. Such resonators can be constructed using open circuit or short circuited transmission line, enclosed rectangular and cylindrical waveguides, etc. The quality factor of such resonance cavities can be computed in terms of electromagnetic fields using the same defining expressions. Electromagnetic field theory is mainly used to discuss the applications related with radiation of electromagnetic energy. Antennas of different types form one of the important part of applied field theory. We have network theorems to discuss the coupling and transmitting phenomena associated with antennas. The concepts of circuit theory along with these theorems can be found useful for developing the devices using phenomena of radiation of energy. For development of many devices, we make use of magnetic energy along with electrical energy. Transformers play an important role in these regards. For a desired fraction of the flux linkage between primary and secondary coils of the transformer, cores of different shapes and size made up of ferromagnetic materials having specific magnetic properties are employed. Naturally, one may ask the question, how such magnetically coupled systems are designed or analyzed? Can we have magnetic circuit which deal with transfer of magnetic energy? The answer is yes, certainly yes. We have what are known as magnetic circuits. A magnetic circuit is analogous to an electrical circuit. Observe the two circuits and note the analogy. The magnetic flux is analogous to electrical current. The opposition by the magnetic material of the core to the magnetic flux through it is known as reluctance. It is analogous to resistance. However, instead of dissipating, it stores the magnetic energy. Current carrying coil of primary is a source of magnetic energy in the form of MMF, that is magnetomotive force. The magnetomotive force is analogous to electromotive force of a battery in electrical circuits. Electric circuit forms a closed path through which electric current flows. Similarly, in a magnetic circuit, magnetic flux lines are continuous and form closed paths. One should note some of the differences between electric and magnetic circuits as shown. We have magnetic analogues of Ohm's law and Kirchhoff's law, which are as shown. Analysis of magnetic circuits are difficult to carry out due to several reasons. One of the prominent reasons is that magnetic circuit involves ferromagnetic materials, and the magnetic permeability of these materials may vary severely with applied magnetic field. When the mathematical expression for magnetic and electric field are simple and have definite significance, the system can be analyzed using circuit theory. The propagation of TEM wave through a coaxial cable at low frequencies is a good example of it. The geometry and fields are as shown. Note that both the fields are independent of the distance r, hence they are simple and are perpendicular to each other at every point. At low frequencies, the transverse dimensions of the cable are small as compared to wavelength of the signal. Hence, the propagation of TEM wave can be discussed by circuit theory. However, at higher frequencies, the two fields are no longer transverse and the transverse dimensions of the cable also may not be small as compared to the wavelength, and circuit theory cannot be applied. Analysis of this case is to be done using field theory. See the two circuits as shown. Circuit in figure A contains a voltage source Vt, a resistor with resistance R, and parallel plate capacitor of capacitance C. The current as calculated using circuit theory is It. Now let us assume that in this circuit, due to some reason, one of the plates of the capacitor undergoes a slight deformation as shown. How to determine the current I dash t in the circuit? Of course, if we know the capacitance C dash of the deformed capacitor, then using circuit theory equations, we can determine the current I dash t. But how to determine C dash? While determining capacitance of a system of conductors having irregular shape, we may use graphical field mapping techniques. While applying these techniques, we have to consider the distribution of electric field inside the capacitor. But once the capacitance is determined, then at low frequencies, we may treat the system of two conducting plates as a single two-terminal element with potential difference V having capacitance C dash, and then apply the usual circuit equations to it. While applying circuit theory, the geometrical parameters like shape, size, and the field configuration becomes less significant. It is advisable to get more information about such interacting graphical methods from standard text and references. Friends, so many things can be discussed about relationship between circuit theory and field theory, but the question is how to obtain the electric and magnetic fields propagating in a given medium. How the electromagnetic energy propagates in the space. We will discuss about it in the next module. Thus, to summarize, we may say that circuit theory is an approximation of electromagnetic field theory. However, it is very simple and highly useful in most of the practical applications. The results of circuit theory, various laws, can be derived in more general form by using the results of field theory. Whether a given system is to be analyzed by using lumped or distributed parameters depends upon the wavelength of the signal which we use, and the limitations or the limits in general can be obtained by using the concepts of field theory. Some systems like waveguides cannot be analyzed using circuit theory. Magnetic circuits can be analyzed by using their analogy with electrical circuits. Thank you.